All right, I will call the Senate Judiciary Committee to order. Will the Secretary please take the roll?
Senator Harris. Here. Senator Dondell Loop. Senator Orenshaw. Senator Wynn. Here. Senator Hansen. Here. Senator Krasner. Here. Senator Stone. Here. Chair Shywell.
Here, thank you so much. Please mark Senator Dawn Durloop present when she arrives. Please mark Senator Orenshaw present when and if he arrives. Otherwise, mark him excused absent. As you can see, thank you everybody for your patience, by the way, and being flexible. It's that time of session, and I apologize if any of you are here for a bill that was previously on the work session. As you can see, I don't have my full committee today, so we are going to be pushing those bills to Thursday and Friday and get them work sessioned on one of those days, because we will find a time to get the whole committee together and do work sessions. But today is not a day when we will find that time. Today is the day that we will hear AB 340. I don't know if the sponsor of the bill was planning to be here to present. All right, then we'll go into a brief recess while we find the sponsor, and we will get started in short order. We're in recess. All right, we'll come back to order in as much as it's necessary. And now we will get started with AB 340. Come on up. Take your time. You're the only bill on our calendar for today, so we have plenty of time to hear the bill, talk about the bill, listen to other people talk about the bill. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and all the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Chandra Summers Armstrong, and I'm the Assembly Representative for Nevada Assembly District 6 in the heart of Las Vegas. I love my community. I think you all know that. You've seen me here before. And AB 343, oh Lord. 340. Whew. It has been a day. Is a reflection of the concerns that I am hearing in my community that have to do with housing, and specifically with what has been happening over the last several years in the eviction crisis, partly as a result of COVID, but partly influenced by other factors, many of them outside the ability of my constituents to control. The rise in rents, the decrease in availability of affordable housing, and the rise and the lack of rise in details of the bill. I have with me Jonathan Norman. Y'all call him John, I call him Jonathan because I really like that name. And he is my cohort and co-pilot on this bill. I'm so proud that the Legal Aid of Southern Nevada supported this effort for me and with me, and he's going to walk you through this bill one section at a time. We welcome your questions, we welcome your input, and we are hopeful that this discussion will lead to your support of Assembly Bill 340. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. We're also joined by Drew Wheaton. He's the lead attorney at Northern Nevada Legal Aid on their eviction cases to answer any technical questions about how things are working now. If it's okay, so Chair, I can walk through the bill, but first I just want to lay some of the groundwork if that's okay. Okay. So, you know, the primary thing this bill does, there's a lot of blue in the bill, but we're really doing one thing. We're changing the order that summary eviction cases, what they track. So currently, and I'm just going to talk about a non-payment of rent because that's the most common, but it does affect the other summary eviction proceedings. The proceeding now starts when a landlord places a 7-day notice to pay or quit on the tenant's door, gives it to the tenant. So that says, in the next 7 days, you need to vacate the premises, you need to pay the rent you owe, or you need to go to the court and file an answer with the court. At that point, the answer is going to be the first pleading filed with the court. So the landlord has not filed a complaint. When that 7 days is over, the landlord can then, on the 8th day, file a complaint with the court. And then the court goes and looks names and addresses to try to match that complaint to see if there was an answer filed, because they don't want to issue a lockout order if an answer was filed. If an answer is filed, they set it for a hearing. If an answer is not filed, they transmit a lockout order to the constable, and once the landlord follows up with the constable and lets them know how that lockout should occur, do they want a locksmith there, et cetera, then the constable will post that notice no sooner than 24 hours and no later than 36 hours. In practice, constables don't meet that 36-hour deadline because it's just not practical. So what we're proposing in this legislation primarily is this one change, is that at the end of the 7-day notice, the tenant gets that 7-day notice, you haven't paid your rent. They can pay or they can vacate. And instead of filing an answer, on the 8th day, the landlord files a complaint, serves the tenant with that court-stamped document so they know this is an official proceeding, and then the tenant has 7 days to file an answer. So while there's a lot of blue in the bill, that is the fundamental change. And then some of the other blue is reorganization, so it's language that exists already in statute. And then some of the language is to build the framework for that one change. For example, we have to decide when a notice becomes stale, right? Because now we have a different process. We have to change our ceiling a little bit. But just remember, no matter how much blue is there, that's the one significant change. And then another big change we made in order to not extend the timeline too long is we switched from judicial days, which is how we've counted those notices previously, to calendar days. So under judicial days, you're not counting any days the courts are closed, and so we didn't want to just tell landlords you have to eat all these extra days. So by switching to calendar days, it still is a few days longer depending on when in the week you file that notice. So with that, I'll walk through the bill. There was an amendment yesterday, Chair, and if it's okay, I'll walk through that amendment. It makes technical changes. Okay. That good? Okay. So Section 2 sets out the procedure for summary evictions in cases of non-payment of rent. It includes the type of notice, what needs to be contained in the notice, the filing of the complaint, the contents of the complaint, the service timeline for the complaint and summons, the 7-day timeline for the tenant to answer the complaint, and the summary order if the tenant does not file an answer. Subsection 6, A and B in our amendment have been combined. That's just to make it clear that there's only one order. It's an order for removal of the tenant and ordering the constable to do their duty. How it was drafted, I thought maybe it would think that there were a need for two separate orders. Subsection 7 describes the process in cases where a tenant timely files the answer, and then subsection 10 provides for how notices are to be served, and the amendment makes it clear that the complaint and summons are included in that section. And then I did just want to point out in Subsection 14, we had in the amendment crossed out A and B. I think that was an error. We still need that in to make sure that commercial premises are not impacted by that section. So I wanted to make that clear. That's subsection 14, A and B. In the amendment, I have those lined out in purple. They should still be in the bill. Section 4 sets out when and how the constable should post the notice of eviction. And you'll notice that we changed it to as soon as reasonably practical, but not earlier than 24 hours after posting the order, remove the tenant. And that's just to have the statute in line with practice. The constable's unable to meet that timeline. Section 5 is currently in the statute, so this is just language that was reorganized. It's in 40.253, subsection 8, and conforms to the new procedure. Section 6 is currently in NRS 40.253, subsection 9, and conforms to the new procedure. And then section 6.5, let me get there in my paper here. I went too far. So section 6.5, it addresses the other types of summary procedures, summary evictions that we wanted to reach. For example, unlawful detainer possession after expiration of term, unlawful detainer possession of property leased for indefinite time after notice to surrender. So if you'll notice in 6.5, it spells out 40.251, 2514, 2516. So this reaches those other summary proceedings. And then it's going to be a very similar process as for the evictions for non-payment of rent. So it follows the same timeline. So the landlord is going to post a notice, and they're going to post it according to those sections, so 40.251, 2514, or 2516. The tenant is going to, if it's a lease violation, for example, remedy the lease violation in that time. If not, the landlord files a complaint, serves it on the tenant, and the tenant can file an answer. The one thing we did eliminate from that section is 40.250. That's for a holdover tenant when there is a lease. The reason we eliminated that is we feel that the lease functions as a first notice, so the landlord should go right to being able to file a complaint. And then all the other changes throughout section 6.5, they track the changes in section 2. So, for example, combining the orders so that we don't have two orders. We have one order directing the eviction, and the same order directs the constable to remove the tenant. And so it goes through that same process. And then we wanted and we also just have that the court's reviewing in cases where the tenant does not file an answer, the court's just making sure that all the steps were followed and that there is legal sufficiency for the eviction. And then skipping down to section 11 is the next significant change. And we eliminated the COVID-19 emergency language. And then we just made sure that the record sealing conformed with what we currently had, so that cases where a landlord prevails in an eviction, that's not a sealed case. So we're sealing cases that are dismissed. We're sealing cases that no action has happened. And with that, I think we're ready for questions.
All right, thank you. Members of the committee, questions for our presenters? Senator Stone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Norman and Assemblywoman, for your presentation. When there's a issue with a tenant, let's say they're not paying their rent, there's some time that goes by before usually a landlord like myself would serve a 7-day notice. 7-day notice puts the tenant on record that they owe money. They have a signed contractual lease to pay the money, and if they don't respond, and then we can go to the order of the court, get an order from the court. If they don't answer, then we get basically an eviction order for a constable. It seems like a very simple process. So tell me how the process is flawed, because prior to COVID, it seemed to be equitable for a landlord to appropriately relet their space if somebody is not paying, and especially smaller landlords that may not have the resources for the delays that I see in here. I count at least 22 days in addition to what a landlord normally has to go through, in addition to possibly hiring an attorney in a contested case. So if you could tell me what's wrong with the present system, and why should we go for a system that is just prolonging potentially the agony?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator Stone. Jonathan Norman for the record. So if you count the days going from judicial to calendar, I don't know that we're adding 22 days. And I actually think that and it does depend on what part of the week, but I would be happy to sit down and chart it out. But no, none of the times I've charted, we're gaining like, depending on when it falls, but I have not seen any scenario where it would gain that amount of time. And then the second thing is, I think there will be a cost savings, because at least in Las Vegas Justice Court, and Mr. Wheaton can speak to, he works in the rurals up here and then in Washoe County. The period of time it takes for the court to match the complaint to the answer is about a week. And I think as we switch this to a more ordinary civil process, you will have those orders being able to issue much faster. I don't think you'll have that 1 week delay there. Now that's, just my instincts, right? We'll have to see how that plays out. And I think going from, judicial days, if I just look for a second, so if we filed today, we'd start counting tomorrow, so we'd go the 18th, 19th, 22nd, 3rd, 4th, 25th, 26th, if you counting judicial days. So you wouldn't be able to file your complaint till the 29th. If we counted calendar days, we'd go 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. The 25th, you're filing your complaint. There's going to be a minute. You got to get it served, right? And you got to get the stamp. So counting a couple days there, but you'll be filing, the tenant's answer period will run, 27, 28, 29, 30, probably the 2nd. So you are gaining a few days. We're not going to hide that. But I think, and then to your question about why is this a better system? So fundamentally, I think, when you have tenants who move here, it's the only civil proceeding I'm aware of, and the only proceeding that I'm aware of in the country where we have the first filed document with the court is an answer. Now, every state that I'm aware of has a summary proceeding. I practiced in New Mexico. The summary proceeding, landlord did a notice very similar to what we're suggesting here. The tenant actually, if they did not do anything like fix the issue, lease violation, whatever it is, they then, the landlord files the complaint, and the tenant actually gets a summons with the complaint. And in New Mexico, you can either file your answer, or you can show up at that court date and present any of your defenses orally to the court. So we're not suggesting that we shouldn't have a fast process. A fast process, I think, is important to the functioning of our, landlord-tenant ecosystem. But I think it's difficult for tenants who don't understand that notice is really functioning as a complaint. And I think if you move here from another jurisdiction, you're just not up to speed on that. It doesn't track what other states do or what we do in any other civil proceeding. And then the second thing is, when a tenant, so they don't react to that notice, they then get that constable lockout notice. And that's the first time they really understand that they are losing their home. And so they come to the Civil Law Self-Help Center at Las Vegas at the Regional Justice Center, and they say, can I file an answer? And their moment has passed, right? So our team is connecting them to social services, and we're looking at rapid rehousing. And the cost of rapid rehousing to our local jurisdictions is extremely expensive. The reason is, they're master leasing older hotels and putting families in there. And then that's not stability, right? That is a momentary momentary thing for that family. And so if they're able to come in, and I know 7 days doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot more than that lockout notice, right? And they'll still have that time period as well, for us to see if there is a legal defense, and for us to connect them to social services so that maybe we have better options than that expensive rapid rehousing. And to be candid, in our community right now with the rising rents and the dearth of affordable housing, I'm not sure how realistic that is. But it does buy us some more time.
I appreciate your explanation, and as you've heard me say in previous hearings, I consider myself a compassionate landlord, having been a landlord here for 5 years. I've never evicted one person, even people that have fallen significantly behind on their rent, because I agree, these are human beings, and we don't want to push people out. But at the same time, there are a lot of landlords that may not be in the financial position I am to absorb some of those losses, and I'm talking about elderly people that might own 1 or 2 homes or 1 or 2 condos, and this is a source of their income for them to live, and to create more complications for them now can put them in financial jeopardy. So those are the concerns that I have with, well, I've always found you to be a gentleman. I know you're working to try to ease suffering and ease financial considerations when people get tied up into a lease. But from a landlord perspective, we give them a lease that is in layman's language as possible. I'll be happy to share with you one of my leases so you can see it. And then so I want to make sure that our tenants understand the deadlines that are imposed upon them. And we always work with them. But I worry that sometimes government comes up with a stick and makes things a little bit more difficult for people that maybe can't afford to hire an attorney, can't afford to go to court, when very simply we just go with Southern California evictions and say, here's the issue, here's the leases, take care of the problem for us, and we can take care of other parts of our business. So, but I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Other questions from members of the committee? Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. No, I've really enjoyed our discussions, actually, when you came by and lobbied on, I don't know if it was this one or not, but because of your perspective from New Mexico and other areas, it was quite interesting to see. I guess the question, 2 questions. First, on the bill itself, section 2, line 14, where you have an exemption apparently for people that are federal workers, tribal workers, state workers. Is that connect to some other state law or something? Why is there this exemption from this for that particular group of people?
Thank you for the question. It's from a bill in 2019, AB 393, and it pre-existed COVID, and it was my understanding, and maybe legal can jump in, is it was to assist with if there's a government shutdown. So that's existing language and statute.
Okay, I was just wondering. I didn't recall that. It must have been 2019. I missed it or something. But overall, no. The number of people that this will help. Okay, you mentioned that when people come to you now and they say, "I just don't have the money to pay," you can't help them at that point. That apparently is a pretty high percentage, though, of those folks. I mean, what percentage of people will this really, truly assist? Because bottom line is, if they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their rent. So how many of them are actually in a situation where they have the money and for some reason they haven't made their rent payment, and this extension of time will actually help them make it right with their landlord?
Senator Hansen, Jonathan Norman for the record. That is an impossible question to answer, but I'll hazard some
We'll
guess,
take a
some
mathematical
guesswork.
guess, 20%, 100 a year? Or
So I think it will help people in a lot of different ways that maybe on its face it doesn't look like, right? Because I do think that creating some space, and the reason is, like right now, like we have that 7 judicial days, right, prior to the court action being filed, right? And so that can be, as we just counted, that could be like 12 days once you factor in weekends. But that time is not meaningful to the tenant, right? Because either they're don't understand what's going on. They sometimes, we'll have tenants who get the notice, they call their landlord says, "Don't worry about it. We've worked through this. You get one of these every month, but this month it's serious." So they don't know to take it seriously. And so then they get that lockout notice, and all of a sudden we're in crisis, right? So that time that we have right now, that's costing the landlord, money, is not meaningful time to our tenant, because they're not getting housing, they're not getting legal resources, they're not looking at what's coming next. Maybe they don't even understand it's serious. So by having time on, once they get a court-stamped eviction, I think that's more meaningful time. So even for tenants who are going to be evicted, in the case of somebody who hasn't paid their rent and they don't have the money, they now have more meaningful time to chart what's coming next and to interface with social services to have a better outcome than the constable showing up at their home, posting a notice, and then coming back and locking them out. And, you know, the amount of, if we think of the cascading damage that does to families, that rapid lockout, you know, kids are probably going to have to change schools, right? You have potential job loss if you have to then try to pack up your property on that short notice period and get out. You have, you know, just the trauma to the family that happens there. And I think those 7 days, even in cases where we don't have a defense, those days will matter for families.
I got it. Well, say I looked at it from a different perspective. You're basically saying we need to extend out the time. I'm thinking to make it right so that they can get their rent paid. What you're suggesting, though, is the real purpose behind the bill is to simply buy them another week so that they can. They're not going to be able to make the rent payment, but they're not familiar with the whole process of evictions and trying to find some new place to relocate and so forth. So I different understandings of what the intent of the bill was. I'm thinking they're trying to basically come up with a way to pay the rent and stay in their home, where you're suggesting it's more like buying them a little window of time so social services, other organizations like that can kind of step in.
Well, I mentioned that only because for the cases where there is, Jonathan Norman for the record, for the cases where there is a defense, right, that'll be a smaller percentage of cases, but this time will matter for those people. I think those are like the obvious things. I wanted to suggest with my answer that there are other people that this will benefit other than the group that we are actually targeting in the bill. Because I think the group we're targeting in the bill are, we want people who have legal defenses to know that they've been served with a lawsuit and to be able to avail themselves of the court. And I would suggest that a secondary benefit is it's going to allow for those, it's going to create more meaningful time than those, 7 to 12 days that come before the time has run on the notice.
Okay, well, that seems fair. The only question in that is there any benefit to the people that actually own the property by having this extension of time?
Jonathan Norman for the record. The benefit to, primarily this is to create a more, a system that comports with the rest of our civil legal process. I would say that we're trying to minimize the costs to the landlord, and that's why we moved from judicial days to calendar days. Is there an additional cost there? Yes. But when we're talking about somebody, losing their home, and with the prospects of what the alternatives are right now, I think, if we're tacking on what amounts to an extra handful of days, I think it's, I guess that's from a policy perspective, I think that's a good policy.
Very good.
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you, Senator Hansen, for the observation, and also to you, Senator Stone. And I'd just like to kind of input here. Just because something was an accepted practice doesn't necessarily make it equitable. And the folks who have been harmed, it's on both sides. And I think that we have an outsized voice, have had for the last 2 or 3 years we've heard way more stories, a lot of stories, in the last 3 years or so because of COVID, from both sides. And previously, I think, we heard more from those who were landowners, who were the landlords. And their voices were the ones that we crafted the law for, we've had people who have advocated for, and they've had the opportunity to have this law in place as it is, because nobody really did anything about it. And I think COVID really showed us that there really is an inequity. And And we know that when we go into business, any type of business, there is risk. And whether you are Chandra, who used to be a government worker and decided to upsize my home with my husband many years ago and leave a little small house on the east side of town and rent it, when I did that, I took a calculated risk. And I took that risk, but I was financially able to make a move. So if my renter got in trouble for whatever reason and was behind, it behooved me as a person who took a risk as a businesswoman, who I thought I was at the time, to recognize that I had to make an account for that. I knew that I had a mortgage in both places. I knew that I had utilities that were still in my name in both places, and that I had to plan for that. Whether I was a young 30-something-year-old or an older 50-something-year-old, as I am now, we take that risk. And so that doesn't stop us from having to comply with laws. So whatever laws are in place at the time is what we have to comply with. And so the main purpose of this is equity. We don't have, in any situation in our jurisprudence, do we have a situation where you answer before there's a complaint? Nowhere. There's always a complaint first, especially in civil practice. And so this is just to bring that in line. And does it shift the earth just a tad? Absolutely. But the landowner is still, by far, at the benefit of anybody else. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. We definitely want equity, but I'm trying to get as much balance on both sides of that equation as we can. Appreciate your comments. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Other questions? Senator Stone.
Just one follow-up. Mr. Norman, you mentioned that tenants sometimes don't understand what a 7-day notice is when it's posted on their door. Have you thought about legislation that requires in a lease that we put a 7-day notice in there as an example to show what will be posted if you don't pay your rent, and in layman's terms explains that you could actually be locked out of your home if you don't comply with the provisions of your lease? And that way we have a better educated tenant so that they're not ignorant to the process and everybody's playing by the same set of rules.
Jonathan Norman, for the record. Thank you, Senator Stone. I think that's interesting. I think, one thing, just to candid, that I worry about is we have tenants who get one of these notices every month. And when you get that notice every month and it's just, and there's complexes in Las Vegas where every tenant gets one of these every month. Like, it's just the practice of and so I don't know. I think it's interesting. But I think when I think of legislation, I think we're not just legislating for our good landlords, right? We're legislating for, we had one of our large landlords in the state, the U.S. House investigated them and published a report calling them uniquely egregious, even amongst all the landlords in the country, right? And so I think we're not just legislating for the good landlords, we're legislating for those landlords who are looking to take advantage of people. And I really hope that good landlords don't find this to be onerous, right? Good landlords, I want them to be in business, but I think for those that have bad intentions, I think this goes a long way to potentially getting cases in front of a judge, and I think that's important. So I thank you.
Other questions from members? I have just a comment and a question, and I'll say I really like how far this bill has come, and I think that it does a great job of kind of accomplishing the goal that we talked about months ago, which was to flip the process, I don't want to say on its head, flip it back up on its feet, because it was on its head before, where the tenant was the first one to file in court, and so now we have the landlord is the first one to file in court, but you still maintain the ability to do a summary eviction. I also will just say, in my own legal practice, that you can really try to make anything digestible and easier to understand, but clients still It's scary to get any kind of notice that is legal at all. And clients text me pictures every day of, parking tickets and their voter registration cards and letters that they receive. Sometimes they're actually spam. They're like junk mail that they mistake for a legal filing. And they're so worried about any interaction with the law that they want my help to read it and understand what it is. And so I think that, whatever we do, that 7-day notice is never going to be as explicit or clear as we would like, because no one, it's just not. It's just not. And so I think the approach is the right approach to make the system more friendly to those people who have to interact with it for the first time when they're already in distress and already in crisis, rather than trying to change the way that we communicate the system to change the behavior. That's the wrong approach. So this is the right approach. The bill is the right approach. There's a very long comment to get to my question, which is that we've talked about summary eviction so much, and I've become so familiar with that process. I'm hoping that you can just give us a little bit of context about what the non-summary eviction would be, because basically, if I'm reading this right, we're saying that the summary eviction is one where rent hasn't been paid and the person doesn't respond at all. The moment somebody files a response to the eviction complaint, then do we leave summary eviction land and go to regular eviction land, or are we still in the summary possibility?
So Jonathan Norman, for the record, we are still in summary eviction land, but there is an off-ramp, and I am going to kick that to my colleague to answer.
Drew Wheaton, Northern Nevada Legal Aid. Sorry, Jonathan, which off-ramp are you talking about?
When the case moves to formal eviction from summary.
Okay. So currently, there are 2 eviction processes in Nevada. There's summary eviction. I looked at the numbers reported to the Supreme Court last year. I believe summary eviction is used in, I want to say 98.5% of all evictions in Nevada. There is a formal process, though. It's NRS 40.290 et sec. It is still a fast process, but it allows for things like discovery. It allows for, it resembles much more like a standard court process. It has some more due process protections in place. However, I've been doing this for about 4 years. I have never had a formal eviction. If that tells you how often, but I've had, tenants who have had 5, 6, I think I've had one tenant who had 10 different summary evictions, that I had to defend for the client. So, there is a process in place. It's just not used. It's used, by statute. It's used when you have like a mobile home, when somebody's being evicted for cause. But generally speaking, it is never used.
Okay, so that does kind of get to my question, which is when we talk about changing summary eviction, we're talking about changing the main eviction process for most people. And so under the new process, and I'm sorry, I know if I read the bill more closely, or maybe even listened more closely to your presentation, I would have gotten this, but just bear with me. Help me out here. When we do go to this process, the notice is given for the 7 days, and if the tenant still can't pay the rent and they do respond, they file that, after the 7 days, the landlord is able to file the complaint, and then the tenant has how many days to respond?
7 calendar days. Jonathan Norman, for the record.
Okay, and then once they respond, that triggers the requirement for the court to set a hearing within 20 days? No, but it does require the court to set a hearing?
The court will set a hearing, yes. I don't think we set a timeline for the court, so they would set it in the ordinary course.
Okay. Thank you. That helps give me the picture of what we're looking at. Go ahead.
Drew Wheaton, Northern Nevada Legal Aid. I believe that you're still going to be in summary eviction. So, the standard that's used in summary eviction is a summary judgment standard. So if there are genuine issues of material fact, the point of the hearing is not to sort those out. The point of the hearing is to determine if there are genuine issues of material fact. If so, then summary eviction is not the appropriate course. The judge is required to dismiss the eviction, and if the landlord wants to pursue a formal eviction, that's what the landlord would do. Additionally, if there is a legal argument against the eviction, the judge is supposed to not evaluate the legal argument, just the fact that there is a legal argument, and then again dismiss the case and require the landlord to pursue a formal eviction.
Thank you. That clarified it for me. Did that make it less clear for anybody else? All right, good job. Thank you. I don't see any other questions from the committee, so thank you so much for presenting to us and for answering all of those questions. And for these additional remarks, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Chair, I have another bill up in another committee room, so if I can be excused for the remainder.
I don't know how we're going to do this without you, so I'm sorry.
I am superfluous. Thank you, Chair.
You can go, yeah. All right, and we will move into testimony in support of AB 340, starting with those in person in Carson City. But if you're in person in Las Vegas, go ahead and come up to the front of the room and start filling those 2 chairs. We will limit testimony to 2 minutes per person, and you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the committee. My name is Paul Catha, and I represent the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. The COVID-19 pandemic hit culinary union members and their families incredibly hard. While many hospitality workers have returned to work, culinary union members have not recovered from the effects of the pandemic, and thousands are struggling with housing insecurity. The Culinary Union is a member of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance, and we would like to thank the Assemblywoman for bringing this bill and for working with the NHJA. According to January's Census Bureau Household Pulse Survey, 49.8% of adults in Nevada experienced difficulty paying for the usual household expenses in the last 7 days. In the first couple weeks of 2023, Las Vegas had the most eviction filings among major U.S. cities. Nevada must change the filing order for summary evictions because tenants should have the right to due process when threatened with losing their homes. Nevada's summary eviction process is unique in the United States, and it's the only civil procedure in Nevada that requires the defendant to file the initial notice with the court. This is bad and confusing public policy which negatively impacts Nevadans and culinary union members. Every Nevadan deserves an affordable and stable home, and an eviction should never be a surprise. Working families and people of color are disproportionately impacted by housing insecurity, and the Culinary Union believes that every Nevadan deserves to be treated with dignity. The Culinary Union urges the committee to support and pass SB 340, thank you, or AB 340, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lilith Barron, Lilith Baran, with the ACLU of Nevada. We strongly support this bill, and I would like for us to just remember when it did not pass last session, how much better shape the housing industry was and renters were in, and how much worse they are off now that we did not pass this bill. I would hate to see conditions become any worse. We know that many landlords were made whole through federal dollars after having, rental assistance dollars being paid to them, which is absolutely all right, but families were not made whole, and many are still struggling to find housing. I'm also the chair of the Reno Initiative for Shelter and Equality, shelter for families and children and single women. And most of the people that come through our doors are there because as a result of summary eviction, whether one way or another, they're trying to get to work, trying to get kids to school, were unable to file an answer, didn't know they had to file an answer. It's a result of confusion, and it takes them years to go back and find housing, and they have that scarlet letter on their record for the rest of their rental career. So we urge you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Samuel Cano, Samuel Cano, Cano. I'm a nursing student at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and also a member leader of Make the Road Nevada. I'm here today in support of AB 340. I want to give a big thank you to my Assembly member, Summers Armstrong, for bringing this bill forward. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Chair, Madam. My name is Silvia Buenrostro, Silvia Buenrostro, Buenrostro. And I am in support of the AB 340. I am a 27-year culinary union member, organizer, and previously in the crash, when the economy crashed in 2009, 2010, I lost my house where I've been a homeowner for 17 years. And this bill will help everyone, Nevadans, whether they are homeowners or tenants. In my case, after my son, who was 7 years old at the time, had an asthma attack and I was in the hospital for 7 days with him, I have great benefits and great wages and I'm being able to pay my rent. But at this time, I did receive a notice, which is the same system that is in place right now. And I was not able to understand the process and did not know what to do. Got me all confused when I suddenly received the 24-hour notice. It was a Friday. I had to go into the court, and by talking to the landlord who owned that only unit, and he was from out of state in California, he told me he could not help me and talk to me, and I had to talk to his attorneys at that time. And so went to the court. Finally, I got on Friday my paycheck, got the money on my hand, trying to make the payment when I did not understand the whole process. And as I was talking to the clerk with the money in my hand, I was called by my daughter who was getting evicted, thrown out with the constable with my 7-year-old in wintertime with no medicine. And it was a Friday where at that time I had no idea what else to do. I did not have any time to go and get any kind of assistance. And that system is still in place, and it is a long time. Up until this day, I'm still renting. I have not been able to recover being a single mother of 5. And it doesn't matter if you've been a homeowner. You know, I was a 17-year homeowner and I lost my house. And this is helping with tenants, and it's going to help the homeowners as well. If you're able to keep the tenant that you have, a great tenant, paying your bills, and for something like happen, you know, for some kind of emergency or hardship, you're able to get some sort of assistance and maintain that tenant in there. You won't get squatters, and you won't be able to have your property destroyed as well. So I urge your support to please assist us with AB 340. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Amber Falgout, AMBER-FALGOUT, and I am the Northern Nevada Manager with Battleborn Progress. We are in support of AB 340 to reform the summary evictions process. The summary eviction process has been abused against Nevada tenants for far too long. During the COVID-19 pandemic, despite state and federal eviction moratoriums, we saw corporate landlords trying to kick families on the street during a public health crisis. Our executive director personally helped Nevadans who had to navigate the complicated process while running a community food pantry out of her garage. I have seen the damage this process can have firsthand. It was disgusting, but sadly allowed to happen due to unscrupulous landlords taking advantage of summary evictions, knowing their often low-income or otherwise vulnerable tenants would be unprepared to respond with outside resources or legal assistance. All Nevada tenants deserve the chance for an eviction hearing. Tenants should have access to resources and interventions when coming to court and should have adequate time to find new housing. The current summary eviction process does not allow this, but if passed, AB 340 will be a strong step towards giving tenants their fair opportunity to defend themselves or at the very least to find a new living situation before they are evicted. We thank Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, for sponsoring this bill and presenting today, and we urge you to support it. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Serena Evans. I'm the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. The conversation of housing justice is not just about tenant rights. Housing justice plays a much bigger and critical role in the prevention and intervention of domestic and sexual violence and the overall safety and success of our communities. Simply put, summary evictions are burdensome. Victim survivors of abuse often experience co-occurring financial abuse, which affects every aspect of their lives, including housing. Because they are grappling with abuse and trauma, they do not have the capacity to initiate court proceedings surrounding their summary eviction and ultimately end up leaving their home. This process puts tenants and victim survivors at extreme risk of becoming homeless, which unfortunately directly increases their risk for future violence. Housing justice is violence prevention, and we urge the committee to pass this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erica Minaberry. That's ErikaMinaberry for the record, and I am here in support of this bill. I did have a more eloquent testimony prepared, but I'm tired. I'm really tired of talking before government bodies begging for basically to see me as a human being. I'm a single mother. I have 3 kids. I had a summary eviction last year, and now my rent might go up again. And I don't know what I'm gonna do if it does. I won't be able to pay. I'll have to go through that whole thing again. My kids don't know where they're gonna go to school next year. I've had to leave important belongings behind because I had to just leave quickly because my landlord could raise the rent as much as they want as soon as my lease is up. It's really hard to stand before a committee and beg for these just basic human needs. Not just for me, but for my kids who are still traumatized. They don't know how to behave when everywhere we go, we're not allowed to make it a home because we're afraid of what's going to happen through no cause of our own. I'm paying $2,050 a month for rent, and if it goes up in less than a month, I just cannot afford my rent already what it is now. So I will be with my kids at the homeless shelter. It's really hard for people like me to have faith in a system when we keep getting treated like we're just somebody's bottom line. It's really dehumanizing, and we really need to pass better protections for people like me and my family. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your testimony with us. I don't see anybody else coming to the table in Carson City right now, so we'll go to Las Vegas. For those of you in person, make sure to press the microphone button before you start and give us your name and spelling, and then go ahead. You'll each have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, members of the committee. My name is Diana Diaz, spelled Dianadiaz. As a member leader of Make the Road Nevada and Plan, I am in support of AB 340, which addresses summary evictions. People have to take a day off from work to process the paperwork, and the process of eviction takes too long, and it's not fair to the renters, and will have to lose time off from work. As a disabled and senior resident of this state, I urge you to vote in favor of AB 340 because it's important to create a just and ethical future for all Nevadans. Please support AB 340. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Shanzeh Aslam, ShanZehAslam, and I am the Economic Justice Program Manager with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, a founding member of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance, here in support of Assembly Bill 340. First, we want to thank Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong for bringing forward this important bill that we discussed in detail during the interim. Every Nevadan deserves an affordable and stable place to call home. Yet the current summary eviction process allows landlords to entirely sidestep the judicial system when trying to evict residents from their home, and places the burden on tenants to initiate a court case. Evictions and economic displacement impact us all by putting more economic burden on our communities through increased demands on social services, shelters, and hospitals by families who become homeless, and due to the other costs associated with the disruptions caused by housing instability. By contrast, stable homes promote educational opportunity for children and economic opportunities for families, allowing Nevadans to save for a house, pursue new employment opportunities, and open new businesses. During the past 2 years, our coalition has conducted community outreach, put on educational training on tenant law, assisted in filing for CHAPS, and in responding to summary eviction notices. However, far too many times when a tenant was finally able to connect with us for support, the time had run out on their summary eviction.
This is unexcusable. The time is now to update our summary eviction process, and we urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shanika Cooper. That is Shanieka. Last name is Cooper, Cooper, and I'm a community member here in Las Vegas. I would like to thank Assemblywoman Sandra Summers Armstrong for supporting us, tenants. And I am here as a concerned community member. Myself and my family have been directly affected by the summary eviction process that is in place now. I was one of those tenants that received a notice, and I did contact my owner, as it has been stated before. I was one of those ones that was told, don't worry about it, several times. And in return, when I finally did get the notice, it was too late for myself. Upon me contacting the owner replied to me, and me telling him, you know, there's no way for me to find a place to stay in 5 days or 3 days. I have a son that is disabled and is in a wheelchair, and it is already a hard issue to find a suitable accommodations for wheelchair accessible. And I was simply told, take it as a hard lesson learned. That is not something that an concerned owner tells a tenant. I was not trying to get free rent. My rent was not due. It was just for him to get us out to raise the rent. And so I'm here urging you guys to please support AB 340 and support communities, and we're struggling. Most people don't make the proper funds to even pay the rent. So if they're not, you know, creating issues, I don't see why we shouldn't be protected. So thank you guys so very much.
Sí, soy Gerardo Velázquez Mendoza, miembro de Make It North Nevada. Soy uno de los afectados también por esta propuesta de ley por la cual yo también fui afectado de COVID. En estas circunstancias ahorita precisamente me descansaron del trabajo y estoy pasando por una evicción también. Y estoy apoyando la AB 340, que realmente sí es de suma necesidad para todos nosotros, como lo que estamos pasando ahorita, porque de una manera nuestro trabajo no es seguro y tenemos una familia, como padre de familia, soy afectado, es un estrés tremendo y más que todo pues tengo familia. Todos en general estamos deprimidos y les pido que apoyemos esta ley para todos de suma necesidad en este estado. Gracias.
My name is Erica Marquez. I will be translating for Gerardo. His name is Gerardo Velázquez, and he is in support of AB 340. The reason to it is because he is one of the affected. He is currently going through an eviction as a father, as the holder of his family. He sees the impact of the eviction itself. This is not the first time he goes through it. He was a victim with it again during COVID, and now he can't even hold a job due to the factor that, you know, he doesn't have that security. There's no actual security in his job. He feels depressed. His family is going through a huge depression, and he feels that not only him but many other community members in Nevada are also going through this. With Make the Road, he feels the support, but it's not enough. He urges you guys to please support AB 340, which would definitely make not just an impact in his family, but in the community itself. Thank you.
Hello, Hello, my name is Jahaira Mendez, and I am a proud member of Make the Road Nevada. I'm supporting SB 340, which the tenants' eviction timeframe to allow us to have adequate time to execute the evictions. I believe SB 340 will help me provide much needed notice, and it will impact me by enough time to fill out other applications for residency and find an adequate home within my resources. With the small time frame, I struggled to find a suitable place to live, but I was very lucky that I got help by the community to find a new low-income program that qualified me to be able to find affordable housing. And this bill will positively impact our community. As a young individual, I urge you to vote in favor of SB 340 because it is an important part of the future for the state and to be able to create just and equitable future for all. This is why I ask you for support of SB 340. You support matters to our community and the next generation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andy Romero, ANDYROMERO. I'm the housing organizer for Make the Road in Las Vegas. I'm here in support for AB 340. Firsthand, I've dealt with our community members, tenants all over the residents of Las Vegas, assisting them with evictions, how to apply for them, respond to them, chat applications. I've knocked over 500 doors in our residencies, and firsthand can see how the effect of summary evictions have affected our city and our community. So that's why I'm here in support for 340, not just for myself, but for the community and the members that I reach out every single day. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else coming up to give in-person testimony in either Las Vegas or Carson City. So we will go to the phones for support testimony on AB 340.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer a testimony in support of AB 340, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Yesenia Moya, Yesenia Moya. I'm tired. I've been listening to hearings all day, and I've been calling in to express support or in opposition. And at the same time, I have been packing because I had to go and answer my eviction notice on Monday. And I could potentially be homeless once again. And all because my landlord wants to get somebody that can pay more rent. And I have been trying to figure out where I'm going to live because I'm about to pay about 60% increase on what I pay currently. Trying to find another apartment with an eviction on my record because this landlord wants to kick me out now. And this will be on my record. So I have been homeless on and off since my teens. I've been in different evictions, whether it was from my parents or family members that I was living with or my own. Being homeless, being in spaces where I don't know where I'm going to sleep at night, literally is exhausting. I don't have to stay here and tell anybody my story, but the reason that I do is because landlords have the money to sit there and talk about their stories, to talk about their bottom line, to talk about why their business matters. So I too get to stay here even though I'm packing and tell my story of how these laws affect me. So please pass protections for our community because we're tired.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Carol Rains, and I'm providing testimony today on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance and the Nevada Strong Start Coalition. First, I want to thank the folks earlier who were vulnerable and shared their eviction stories. Your courage will help children and families across the state. Thank you. We're also grateful for the Assemblywoman raising awareness of this problem. We are in strong support of AB 340. This bill will allow for the tracking of data related to evictions so that we can better understand the impact evictions are having on children and families in Nevada. We believe this bill will help prevent families from slipping into homelessness by ensuring tenants are given clear and concise instructions on how to respond upon giving them the opportunity to effectively take appropriate corrective action. In addition to economic distress, evictions are also on the rise due to competition for properties, as we've heard today, and tenant protection is needed now more than ever. As a benefit to landlords, this bill also offers time for tenants to find the money to pay missed rent and potentially prolong the rental relationship. This bill also gives voice to tenants and provides the process for them that reduces misunderstanding and the likelihood that folks will self-evict and then languish on waiting lists in limbo. This bill helps decrease the taxation on rapid rehousing programs. This has an incredibly harmful impact on our children. Eviction does. By streamlining summary eviction, we are offering children and families a better chance of achieving stability. Housing is one of the most basic needs. When we can first secure housing, then we can actually promote health, safety, education, and the overall well-being of our children. Thank you so much for your support of AB 340 and for your commitment to Nevada's children and families.
Hello, my name is Adrian Lowry, Lowry. I'm an organizer with the Northern Nevada DSA, and asking you to please vote in approval of AB 340. The eviction process is incredibly traumatic for adults and children, and with the passage of this, it will reduce the amount of children that have to go through that, very fast summary eviction process. There may be some who are able to stay in their home because of having the time to seek the remedies that will prevent the eviction. I think we just need to do whatever we can to help the people and children who are being traumatized in this process. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Sarah Rojas, Sarahrojas, and I'm calling in support of AB 340. All Nevadans deserve the chance for an eviction hearing. Tenants should have access to resources and interventions when coming to court, and they should have adequate time to find new housing. I urge you to support AB 340. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amber Giroux, AMBERGIROUX, and I'm calling as a concerned community member. Thank you to the Assemblywoman for introducing this, and I urge the support of this bill because the current system is absolutely inhumane, and we have the testimony to prove it. Allowing tenants to pay their rent instead of just kicking them out is an obvious common sense measure if you care about people. So I urge the passing of this bill and I will be very disappointed if it does not pass. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chastity Martinez. That's Chasity, Martinez. I'm a resident of Reno and Senate District 15. I'm also an organizer with Faith in Action Nevada. We work with members of the faith community, as well as those that are impacted by issues around racial and economic injustice. And we are also a member of the Nevada Housing Justice Alliance and believe that housing is a human right. With the current summary eviction process, it's very complicated, and we see more and more folks that are losing what stable housing they do have and having very limited time to make arrangements or find any other form of housing. So it's out of my faith values and concern for my neighbors that I just urge you to please support AB 340 to help make housing more accessible for all people in our community. Thank you.
That concludes callers testifying in support.
All right, we'll then move to opposition testimony on AB 340. Anybody wishing to give opposition testimony is invited to do so in person now in Carson City and Las Vegas. We'll start up here in Carson City. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, John Sandy, here today on behalf of the Nevada State Apartment Association. First, want to thank the sponsor, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, for being a tireless advocate. She called me in early in the session, really enjoyed a conversation, and I think to first say what we're for is the Apartment Association supports the efforts of the bill to rework the eviction process. However, to do that, we think that it's important to, as my client likes to say, create a framework that is going to run smoothly and efficiently like a train, where everybody knows where the stops are and how to get on and off, and have a smooth operating system. Unfortunately, we don't feel that this bill as amended hits that mark. And if I could, I'd like to read some comments. AB 340, as recently amended, is being touted as a simple rewrite of NRS 40 that brings Nevada eviction procedures in line with other jurisdictions. However, upon further examination, the bill will arguably make Nevada's eviction process one of the longest and overly complicated in the nation. If we compare the proposed eviction process in the bill to that of California's process, which is already one of the longer eviction timelines, it's clear that Nevada's process will be longer and more burdensome. So first, the timing requirements are greater than California. California's summary eviction process for possession requires a landlord to serve an initial notice, file a complaint, and then serve the complaint with a summons upon the tenant. This is the process put forth in AB 340. By way of quick example, California requires a 3-day notice be served for non-payment of rent. AB 340 as amended requires a 7-day notice. Additionally, California's process requires a tenant to file an answer to the summons within 5 days. AB 340 as amended provides 7 days. AB 340 requires more notice and time to respond than even California's process. Two, in California's summary eviction, the eviction actions are given precedence within the court. In Section 1179A of the California Civil Code of Procedures, the California Legislature has recognized the importance of timely adjudicating summary eviction actions by mandating that such actions are to be given precedence as to all other types of civil actions in the court system, so as to ensure that such actions are, quote, quickly heard and determined. No such intent is manifest in AB 340. To the contrary, AB 340 places no timing requirements on the courts to accept filings, to set cases, hear cases, or otherwise adjudicate them in any timely manner. In fact, AB 340 actually strips away the only existing timing requirement, which involves lockout effectuation, and removes existing law requiring a sheriff or constable to perform a lockout within 36 hours, and now substituting that timeline to as soon as reasonably practicable. And finally, California's summary eviction process ends with adjudication. AB 340 process does not. Under California's process, the court ultimately decides the case and renders a decision. AB 340 allows the process to end with no relief, requiring the landlord to start over and completely to pursue the eviction under the formal process. And it does this by retaining the provisions in existing law of NRS 40.256, or 536, sub 6, that requires the court to refuse to grant either party any relief and require that any further proceedings be conducted pursuant to the formal eviction process if the tenant has put forth a quote-unquote legal defense. A legal defense is not necessarily a meritorious defense. For purposes of this law, any defense calling into question the veracity of the landlord's basis for eviction, whether it is ultimately valid or invalid, can amount to a legal defense so as to avoid the adjudication of a summary eviction. If a landlord is denied relief via the summary eviction process, they are required to start the eviction all over again utilizing the formal proceedings. This proceeding would require reservice of a new notice, refiling, and reservice of a new complaint and summons. Tenants in the formal eviction process then have 20 days to respond to the complaint, and the hearings on such cases are set out longer than the summary. In short, the summary eviction process set forth in AB 340 is anything but summary when you take into consideration the increased timing requirements beyond that of even California, the lack of urgency in setting and disposing of cases, and the need to completely start over and pursue a second eviction action when a tenant merely disputes the basis for the summary eviction. The intent should be to implement a viable summary eviction process that fairly serves all parties and timely disposes of all eviction cases where possession is the sole issue. If we are going to mirror that of California and other jurisdictions, then we need to adopt and overhaul the proceedings in bulk to further debate. Selecting piecemeal provisions and concepts that only serve to delay, confuse, and ultimately avoid adjudication is not the solution. Thank you for giving me that time. I urge you to oppose AB 340 as written. Thank you.
All right. I don't see anybody down in Las Vegas to give opposition testimony in person, so we'll go to the phones, please, for opposition testimony on AB 340.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer opposition testimony to SB 340, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers to offer opposition testimony at this time.
All right, then we will go to neutral testimony. Anybody wishing to give neutral testimony in person is invited up to the table to do so now.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the committee. For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flint Judici Government Affairs, today representing the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and the Reno Housing Authority. We are probably the largest lords, plural, in the state. And we really want to thank Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. We were originally opposed to this bill, and we had several late night conversations. Mr. Norman has been extremely cooperative as we've worked through the iterations of this bill. I think that the impact of this bill on the housing authorities, whatever this body determines, and that's why we're neutral, whatever you determine is going to be the roadmap for summary evictions, we're going to apply with the law. We see both sides. Obviously, we have a lot of tenants, we have a lot of landlords, we see both sides of the equation as it relates to it, certainly as you discuss the eviction process. One of the opportunities that we see, and we're talking a lot about it, is we've heard a lot of stories today. Stories, and they're sad stories, and they're hard stories. They're hard stories to hear. And they're impactful stories because you're impacting lives and you're impacting families. And one of the things that certainly that we are here advocating for this, which is not in this bill, but we're advocating for, is for more affordable housing. Give us the tools so we can build affordable housing quicker, so that we can have the developers invest in affordable housing in this state, so that when we do have these, when families are in distress or their lifestyles are having to change, that we have some place for them to seek out shelter. So we are currently in neutral. We'll certainly work with the Apartment Association. We'll continue to work with the bill sponsor. But at this point, whatever this body determines is the roadmap for evictions. The housing authorities are certainly willing to work no matter what jurisdiction, whether it's Washoe, Clark, Lyon, Eureka, Elko, whatever the jurisdiction is, we're certainly willing to work with that, and we're certainly willing to work with this body to come with a good solution so we can move forward with the process. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Jeff Rogan. I represent Clark County. We are neutral on this bill. I just wanted to take a moment to address some comments that were just raised regarding the constables. In my day job, I represent the constables at Clark County. The change in the bill was at our request, given the difficulties that we've had in achieving that timeline of 36 hours. It just was an impossibility, especially for some of our smaller jurisdictions that really only have one constable in those rural jurisdictions, and to achieve that timeline just was really quite difficult and prevented breaks even on weekends and holidays. And so we asked that it be changed. Our constables intend to expediently perform these lockouts as they have been, but obviously, given the actual practical constraints of performing it within the timeframes set by law right now, we felt the change was necessary. I'm available for any questions offline if you have any concerns regarding that change. Thank you very much.
All right. I don't see anybody else here to give neutral testimony, so we will go to the phones for neutral testimony on AB 340.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer neutral testimony on AB 340, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. There are no callers wishing to offer neutral testimony at this time.
All right, then I'll invite the sponsors back up to give some closing remarks, make any clarifications you need.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, I'll be super brief. I would be happy in the next session to work on bringing all the tenant protections that California has to our tenants here in Nevada, if that's the model we want to emulate. And also, I think the idea of timelines, the only timeline we're changing, right, is we're switching from calendar to judicial. All the other timelines about when hearings get set, that is not in this bill. That's going to be the same whether this bill gets passed or not. So we're not impacting any timeline, except we're saying we're going from calendar to judicial, and we're adding 7 calendar days. So any other timeline about when a hearing gets set is the same today as it will be in a year, with or without this legislation. And then finally, even though what creates a formal eviction, 98.5% of the cases that are summary eviction stay summary eviction. Formal eviction is the overwhelming minority, 1.5% of cases. So the idea that landlords are going to be burdened, that is when there are, real issues of material fact that the court needs to reach and discovery is warranted, and that's how the process is used. Our courts reach 98 in a summary process, 98.5% of evictions. So the idea that this bill is suddenly going to change that, I think is not the case. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, for being so patient and listening attentively to our presentation and to the community, which I believe has spoken very, very clearly here today. I just want you to kind of wrap your head around this. If you and I have an issue and we want to resolve that, one of us has to file a complaint in the court first. That is not the case currently in summary eviction. Currently, if I was fighting with Senator Harris about anything, would have to file an answer. And that is just not equitable in any other court proceeding. And all we are asking is that eviction mirror that. In a civil case, you have 15 to 30 days to respond. We're just asking for 7. It is just a simple change, but I know that change is difficult for all of us. It's hard for us to rethink habits that we've had for many, many years, whether they're in our life or in our jobs or even in the law. But there comes a time that we have to reevaluate what we are doing and the effect that it has on our community. That's what they sent us here to do. My community didn't send me here just to look beautiful in front of the camera. They sent me here to effect change. Even if that change is a little different, slightly painful, and sometimes not popular, they sent me here to do a job. I appreciate you all listening, and I hope that we've given you enough information that you will support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you go, I think we do have one more question from the committee. Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong and Mr. Norman. So in the law, we always have a rationale for creating a law. And I don't know if this question is for one of you two or our legal team here. What is the rationale for the court proceeding being different? Why does the tenant file first as opposed to the landlord filing a complaint first? What is the rationale in the law for that is my question. So I'm not sure if it's for Mr. Norman or for our legal.
Jonathan Norman, for the record. Thank you for the question. I do not have that answer. I suspect, we had a memo done, which I could share, about the origins of summary eviction in our state. But even it is not extremely clear on it. It seems like if you want my best guess, is we had an extremely transient state that was built on mining and gaming, and the ideas that families would be here was not contemplated when the summary eviction process started. That's the best answer I have gleaned from a memo that a think tank in DC did about our process here in Nevada, and I don't know if legal has plumbed the depths of summary evictions.
Carly O'Krent, for the record. I haven't looked into this. I can look into it and see if there's anything reflected in the record when the laws that we're talking about were adopted.
I appreciate that. I'd really like to know the rationale, because in the law there's always a rationale behind every law that's created. So I was just, if you can help out by providing that rationale by your research and just letting the whole committee know, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the conclusion. Thank you again so much for being here and for presenting this bill. I will now close the hearing on AB 340. I will go to public comment now. Anybody wishing to give public comment in person is invited to do so. I don't see anybody coming up to either table, so we will go to the phones for public comment, 2 minutes per person.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer public comment today, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right, then that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting today. We will be meeting again tomorrow. It's scheduled for 1 p.m. Hopefully it'll be maybe it'll be 1 p.m. It'll be sometime. And until then, we are adjourned.